If they want to like patch the game, almost everything, if they care about present day, should be a buff when you think about it. Because
Hmm.
why would the Animus user slash operator like willingly fuck themselves up? And I
Yeah,
think all of
exactly.
this is really interesting because of shadows. Like in shadows, adrenaline is used to cast skills, but
Hmm.
ammo is a separate resource from it. And that's actually a video
Yeah,
I'm working on, and I have been working on for a while.
yeah, and that's a very, very welcome change.
Yeah, I think that's really, really cool. We should have had it like eons ago. I think Origins did that. Almost everything was ammo, and then Adrenaline was just for combat, but that's obviously not very.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with that.
Odyssey and Valhalla, like, the only ammo is just arrow types, and then in Valhalla,
Yeah.
that's not even the case anymore. Everything goes through Adrenaline.
A lot of people are like, bro, it's just a game. Why do you care? Because Assassin's Creed made its thing
Yeah, because
being the series that says, do away with the excuse it's just a game. The whole point is that there's a diegetic explanation for everything, even why the buttons on the controller are what they are.
yep.
That's this series. So if this were any other game, fine. But that's not the case. This is Assassin's Creed. You can't just hand wave that away. If you want to be able to do this thing, use an IP that's not Assassin's Creed. It's not hard. If you want to make a game that's not an Assassin's Creed game, just make a different game.
Oh, Immortals, Phoenix Rising was really, really good. It
Exactly.
was genuinely a
Exactly.
great game.
What other standard am I going to judge it by if you're calling it an Assassin's Creed game? Am I not going to judge it by Assassin's Creed standards?
I mean, like, most people don't, so we sort of lost, but, like, whatever.
Sure, but like, am I being unreasonable for applying an Assassin's Creed hermeneutic to a game calling itself an Assassin's Creed
I
game?
mean, I wouldn't say
No,
so.
but a lot of people really seem to act like when Assassin's Creed, when classic fans especially say certain stuff, it's like if I apply an Assassin's Creed framework, an Assassin's Creed glasses to the perspective I'm offering on this thing, immediately that's like, well, no,
It
you're
gets
not
so much
that.
pushback for, like,
It's
no
an
apparent
illegitimate
reason.
it's an illegitimate hermeneutic to with which to evaluate the games. It's like what makes your perspective more valid? Like in that thing, it's like okay,
They're just gonna
yeah,
fall back on, like, well, these games sell really well and they do really well, so clearly people want to play them. That's true, but also, like, that doesn't say anything.
it doesn't tell me anything.
It's like
It's
that's what
not
you
a
say when you don't want to have a conversation.
yeah, very very off topic from AC3, but it was a worthwhile digression because I think it really highlights AC3. If your only frame of reference is the classic games, it makes you see it very differently than AC3 post everything else. Like
Yeah.
when you come back to AC3 retrospectively,
Yep.
it's like, oh, again, like that doesn't excuse the downgrades AC3 has, like the parkour especially, the stealth being borderline nonsensical, and
It very much
it doesn't.
requires study.
When I look at this is undoubtedly an Assassin's Creed game. Like a good comparison with is AC Unity. It's like, okay, this is an Assassin's Creed game and not a French Revolution game. If they had actually leaned into the French Revolution more than they did, it would have made the Assassin's Creed part of the game they're trying to talk about way stronger. Unity makes the French Revolution a skin. AC3 uses it as a tool. The American Revolution is a tool, and I think we'll bridge into. I have some points I'd like to make about narrative too. AC3's story is actually brilliant in terms of like what is in the game available to be experienced. Again, I think the pacing, I can't objectively say it's good because of that. But if we look at just the pure content, the writing, I think it's genuinely brilliant. When you look at what Assassin's Creed 3 is trying to do, AC3 is a Corey May game. There are three Corey May Assassin's Creeds: AC1, AC2, AC3. And if you look at those three games, philosophically, there is such an utter philosophical coherence in terms of how those games understand assassins and Templars.
Mhm.
And there's a genuine progression of they take the conflict such that I genuinely like this is gonna be super controversial, but the Juno conflict, like Assassin's Creed going into the Juno Instruments of the First Will, is actually such a genuinely good progression of the Assassin-Templar conflict.
It
Now,
is.
this could have happened with Desmond dying or not dying. I don't think him dying was even bad necessarily. Like I don't think the game handles him dying poorly. I disagree with the decision because I think it took the series in the wrong way. But like it according to AC3, Desmond dying does not like it's just something fans didn't want to happen. but it doesn't make the game's story bad. Instruments of the First World Juno story is actually
It's genius.
It's the natural progression of what the game says about the Assassin-Templar conflict, and most especially about anthropology.
Yeah.
And like
It's literally like,
humanity.
what if we zoom out? What kind of story would we be telling? Right? And
Yeah,
it's like, oh,
exactly.
there's something that wants to oppress both of our factions.
Right.
How do we react to that?
Part of what I'm trying to do with this AC3 stuff is, for a lot of people, AC Unity is like, yeah, Unity's the best. Like that is, you look at a Treviso Stealth Reaper video, for instance. It's like that is the platonic ideal of what Assassin's Creed is in popular, devoted Assassin's Creed fan culture, right?
Yeah.
If we could just go back to Unity, everything would be fine. But my goal is, if I could move that to say the tipping point was not Unity, it was AC3. The turning point was AC3. This is the last time Assassin's Creed really, really, really was Assassin's Creed in the fullest sense. If I could just shift the consciousness of like the more devoted Assassin's Creed fan base to being there for, like, if we actually want the games to change, the new games to change, it's going to be a lot better for us if we're pushing for AC 1 to 3 and what those games are about than saying Unity.
I've been saying this for years. Like,
oh yeah, sure. I think yeah, and I know you've been saying this, right? But
yeah, because it's true. I agree with it. Like,
yeah, and because here's the thing with that is, even just from a not so narratively intricate perspective, like looking even just like stuff like monetization,
yeah.
AC3 has zero. There is no effect whatsoever of microtransactions or anything on any of the gameplay systems in any of those games. Yeah, single player, right? But yeah, that's what I'm referring to. Is the single player experience, right? AC Unity, platonic ideal of Assassin's Creed combat, right? For a lot of people, I can't fight with my hidden blade.
Yeah, I don't feel like an assassin when I can't do that.
I can't pick up weapons that are on the ground.
Yeah.
Why?
Like, am I supposed to be like a cool adaptable fighter who like has learned to fight with all kinds of different weapons, or am I just like a random soldier mook who only knows how to fight with like whatever, right? Like, I can't grab people in Unity.
Yep, I can't grab people. I can't. There's borderline. The only enemy manipulation you have is the what do you call it? Staggering strike, right?
Which is why it's so strong and everybody uses it.
And then the weapon system. Why can't I fight with my hidden blade? Because we're supposed to buy the weapons in the store. It's a Helix store, and there's Helix credits attached to buying good weapons.
Right.
So if the hidden blade is totally chill, because here's the thing, everybody at that point would want to use the hidden blade. Like, every Assassin's Creed fan playing Unity, the game that Assassin's Creed Unity is,
it's like the most assassin aesthetic, like, vibe game ever. Of course we would fight with the hidden blade.
Following AC1, yes.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Everyone would just use the hidden blade. So they don't let you use the hidden blade. They don't let you fight with the hidden blade for that reason, because
it's so heartbreaking that, like, yeah, it's so heartbreaking because it's like, it is known that, like, passionate fans would enjoy doing that and have, like, a cool experience doing that. And it's like, we're just not allowed to do the thing we want to do because we want to do it.
And could you imagine how cool Arno's hidden blade combat would look too? How flashy that guy is. His hidden blade combat would go so hard.
He has hidden blade combat animations when you're using a one-handed sword.
Yep. Yeah. And those are sick.
And they look awesome.
The best animations he has.
Yeah, they look awesome.
So Arno with a full hidden blade combats, like, that would look crazy. Even in Unity system, that would look really, really cool. The real AC3 combat mechanics, Arno animations, that would go crazy.
That pacing, that fluidity.
Yeah. Which the rest of the game has, but Arno's combat does not. But yeah.
It's almost like they got Combat Online the latest.
Oh yeah, they did. Right. They absolutely did, right.
They did. We had those articles released.
Yeah, that it was like, it barely worked until like borderline launch. Yeah. I'll go into the narrative, like, a few narrative points I want to hit on that I especially noticed this time. People say, like, why doesn't Connor want to kill George Washington now? He's like, why doesn't he just go kill George Washington? He wanted to kill Charles Lee for killing his mom. It's like, what is Sequence 8 about? Sequence 8 is Connor going to New York to stop a Templar assassination plot of George Washington because the Templars don't want George Washington in charge. Hatham doesn't shut up for the entire game about how much he wants George Washington to not be in charge.
Yeah.
He never stops talking about that and how much more he wishes Lee would be in charge. So if Connor goes to kill George Washington, he literally gives the Templars exactly what they want.
The whole game is almost like undone by its subtlety because it's a very like it's probably one of the more subtle AC narratives like ever penned.
Oh, 100%.
But like when you think about it, like that, because every assassin has that moment where like it's kind of like Gambit from Marvel, right? It's like, are you a thief or a hero, right? Like with assassins, it's like, are you more the assassin or the man? And then like you have to make a choice, and it breaks you in some way, big or small, right? And for Connor, like that is kind of the divergence where it's like, emotionally, you absolutely would love to take vengeance on this man. But as an assassin and as someone who now has these homesteaders like looking up to you and like,
and the whole brotherhood too,
the brotherhood as well, right?
The
like
you've built,
what is the choice you're going to make, considering that like if the Templars get what they want, you know, more families and more villages will die just like this. Everywhere.
And then the other thing too is like, what's his personal motivation beyond, because he also has personal connections to, like the new home he's forging, but to his old home, it's Connor is like the first Assassin's Creed protagonist that like really believes in like divine mission in a lot of ways, because
and Juno uses that.
Right. But Connor is like, he actually has like his entire worldview is shaped by his belief in, he calls him the Faceless One. That my people have this sacred duty. That is such an incredibly strong driving force that and it tied back to his job to defend the people for the Kanikahaka, to defend that land and to watch over and protect it. Connor's main personal motivation is protect the village, right? Protect my people being able to stay here. What would Charles Lee do if he thinks the assassins, and Connor especially, are going to cause them problems? What would Charles Lee do? Say you had an indigenous person kill George Washington, specifically Connor. How easy would it be to turn the colonists against Connor's tribe?
Super easy. That's the first thing they would do. That is literally the Templar playbook. They use socio-political power as like a bludgeon.
Yeah, and that's actually like the other thing too with this game is like the whole revolution, literally, the Templars started it. Like that seems to be something a lot of people don't really internalize. And even the game itself kind of betrays this because it says the forts are under Templar control or whatever. Like, no, they're under Redcoat control. They're not under Templar control. Even the game kind of betrays this consistent narrative principle in some of its UI decisions. But no, like the Templars are not synonymous with Redcoats. Like they're not on the side of the British. The whole point of the Templars in AC3 is having people in high positions on both sides of the conflict want to sever the colonies from the crown so that they create an entirely new sovereign nation with themselves in charge. That's their point. That is why the American Revolution started. That's why their plan is have a conflict. That's why they who starts the Boston Massacre? Charles Lee shoots a pistol, right?
Yeah.
They started this. They were like, okay, we'll have some small conflicts so that, it becomes too big for the crown to ignore and costly enough that okay, well, we'll just let them go fend for themselves, right? So it's big enough to actually achieve their goal, but because they have people in charge on both sides of the equation, that would allow them to avoid it becoming what it became, right? So Connor coming in and taking out those people, because you had the people that weren't in the know about the situation that now took charge, it really did become what the crown was going to think it was.
Yeah, and Templars are susceptible to this kind of meddling because they are so hierarchical. Yeah. They do keep information from each other. They do keep secrets from each other. So by taking out key personnel, because the others are not in the know, everything kind of destabilizes.
Yep. Or even not even just Templars, but just normal British officials or American patriots. Washington getting in charge was not part of their plan. Lee was supposed to be in charge.
Yeah.
That's why they wanted Washington out, because Washington being in charge was a serious threat to small controlled conflict that would have the colony end with the colony seceding and them being in charge. Nicholas Biddle, who's a Templar that you don't have to kill because he's in technically optional naval missions. He's on the Patriots, setting up fake British things in order to get the Patriots to develop their navy so that they would actually have a chance to fight off the Brits, because it's the British Navy, you guys. Like,
Yeah.
they were pretty serious.
In AC1, like, the Templars are not just in one city or one...
They're with the Saracens as much as they are with the Templars.
Correct, yeah.
And working under King Richard. They're on both sides.
Yeah.
That idea of separate, create this new world where we're in charge is also mirrored in the present day, because there's a line in present day when Desmond's talking to Rebecca. Part of me is afraid, like, the Templars are just completely happy to let the world end, you know, just so they can pick up from the pieces. Ashes.
Yeah.
What has been before shall be again, as Juno says at the end of AC3.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is AC3 has consistent mirroring of how the Templars operate, how the Assassins operate in the past and in the present.
Yes, and also, like, Minerva and Juno's interaction with Desmond also mirrors those previous two layers, where she's like, better the world burn than she be loosed upon it, right?
Yep. And then in addition to that, there's also some mirroring of Connor and Haytham in Desmond and William too.
Yeah.
So AC3 is a narrative of mirrors between Desmond and William and Haytham and Connor.
Yeah, which is also very AC1. AC1 has that same kind of mirroring in the narrative.
Yep. Exactly. So, and it's, again, makes sense, written by the same guy.
Yeah.
So then the other thing I wanted to point out about going back to the Washington plot twist, people are like, well, why? Because Haytham's like, okay, well, then let's be off. And then Connor's like, no, you and I are finished. And then everyone's like, well, why is he mad at Haytham? Why would Connor be mad at Haytham because Washington, like, they don't understand it? It's like, okay, look at how Haytham's been treating Connor this entire time. And it's good you brought up the idea of, like, be the assassin versus, you know, like, am I the assassin or am I the person, right? Because that is Connor's entire character arc in a very real sense. Because I would argue that moment for him actually came a fair bit before. Because, and the biggest thing, this is what I realized about this plot twist, is Haytham organized the entire thing. He is the reason that the attack on Connor's village happened. He is the reason that Washington ordered the attack. Like, and
I mean, it makes sense. Like, the Grand Temple is, like, right there, and he was brought to it by Zio.
Yep. So there's that. But then in addition to that, it's this idea of Haytham has an attachment to Connor, like, emotionally, and he wants to convert him. Both of them want each other to come over to the other side. Yeah. Right? That's why Haytham even works with Connor from the beginning, because realistically, he should have killed him in that church. Yeah. The amount of trouble he had already caused them. If Haytham was being a good, you know, by-the-book Templar in that church, it would have been done. Yeah. Right? If Charles Lee had been in that church, Connor would have died.
Absolutely. No question.
Yep. And that's ultimately why Haytham wanted to put Lee in charge of the Templars, because he knew he was too weak. Yeah. He knew he was too weak to lead them because he has too much attachments to
Which is a very, like, tactical Templar choice to make.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
That is what sets Haytham apart as a leader of Templars compared to, like, so many others, is because he actually does recognize that in himself, and he moves to make the most strategically valuable decision.
Yep.
Which is insane.
If you literally listen to the cutscene, the moment before, like, so number one, there's the previous memory where Haytham's like, you know, brushes with him. He says, I'll meet you at Valley Forge, right? So Haytham's the one that organizes the meeting with George Washington there, right? So he's the one who tells Connor to go meet him at Valley Forge. As they're walking up the hill, they're debating about whatever, whatever. Connor's like, my enemy is a notion, not a nation. In my perspective, Connor is, in a lot of ways, he's already distanced himself from revenge against Charles Lee. In my perspective, he has already distanced himself from that. He's moved beyond that, not fully, but he's already distanced himself from that, and now he is purely like, I'm fighting because principally I believe this is the correct thing to do. I feel morally obliged to fight for what I'm fighting for, you know, and I'm not doing this just to serve some personal, you know, vengeance case, right? Which is why he says my enemy's a notion, not a nation. That couldn't be true if he was just doing it for revenge against Charles Lee, right? So he has already moved beyond the Charles Lee revenge thing, right? So that's why he's not really that particularly upset at Washington. Now, he's upset at him, obviously. He goes up the hill, right? So then Connor's like, whatever, you know, you have said much, but you have shown me nothing. And then Haytham's like, well, then I suppose we'll have to change that now, won't we? Literally the next scene, they find the letter. And then just listen to Haytham's tone of voice. Oh, well, what's this? Oh, yes, of course it's a private communication. Oh, yes, wouldn't you like to know what it says, Connor? Is so smug. He's so, like, the way he lists off the contents of, like, summary form, calling for the extermination. And then he's, like, immediately goes into a diatribe of, so now you see this man is whatever.
That's what's amazing about Haytham is, like, he's so manipulative that he actually does it to the player base and they don't even know.
Yeah, but it's like, he's so obvious, like, and that's the thing. Connor, I love you, Joe, found it Scarab, but I'm dunking on you right now. It's like, oh, Connor's so naive. It's like, he figures it out here. He realizes that Haytham set up the whole thing. He's like, because that's what he said. That's why he's mad at Haytham. He says, no, you and I are done. And he's like, because what does he say? He says, how long have you hidden this information from me? Or am I to believe that you just found it out now? And it's like, you look at Haytham's face in that scene. Like, the face he makes immediately after Connor says that, he's like, oh, I gave it away. Because he doesn't realize how smug and, like, how know-it-all he is, because he just usually gets away with it. But he showed his hand too much. It was too obvious for Connor, and Connor realized that Haytham was in charge. And before he goes away, the last thing he says to them about, if he says, a warning to you both, if you follow me, I'll kill you or whatever. But before that, he says, Charles, my blood may stain a mother's hands, but Charles Lee is no less a monster, and everything he does by your command. And Haytham's can't say no, because Lee's not a rogue. He's a yes man.
He follows orders.
Yeah, exactly. And he is a Templar. Like, he's really, he has that rant with, when Connor's a kid, but he is a Templar. He's not, like, just after power or whatever. He's just very kind of like he's a sycophant. Then you get to the village, and it's like, who riled up Connor's people to go lead the attack against the Patriots? Charles Lee riled up the attack. So you're telling me Lee goes and turns Connor's tribe to go attack the Patriots, and Patriot informants told Washington that there was an incoming attack. Lee's a Patriot. This was done by the Templars. They organized the whole thing to try to turn Connor, like Haytham organized the entire thing. Because again, everything Lee does is by Haytham's command. Haytham organized the whole thing to turn Connor against Washington and do what they've been doing for the entire game, which is get Washington out of leadership of the Patriots, whether it's Connor kills him or whatever. Something happens that, like, they actually burn down the village. Ultimately, Haytham doesn't have any problem with anymore because Canizio is dead and nothing is true, everything is permitted.
Right.
So the game tells you consistently Haytham doesn't actually have any real problems with unnecessarily killing people, would be a better way of phrasing it.
It's really interesting because, like, Templars have been aiming assassins at their targets for literally centuries.
Yep.
Like, it has happened so many times, even in games before AC3.
Yep. Exactly. And again, who wrote those games?
Corey May.
When I played the game this time and I saw that scene, it just hit me. I'm like, of course it was Haytham. How could it not be Haytham?
You really think the acting leader of the Templars at that time and in that region would not put that kind of stuff together? Like, come on.
Or that Lee just went and did that for funsies.
Yeah,
like,
that's
no,
not how he behaves. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like in that very scene, I'm like, that made me realize, like, literally no. And I've seen people like, well, yeah, there's the why didn't he kill Washington? Why is he mad? And I've never seen anyone say Haytham was the reason this happened. But it, like, when I saw it this time, I'm like, how did I miss it? It doesn't even feel even remotely hidden anymore. You look at Haytham's face after Connor says, am I to believe that you discovered this just now? Like, the face, he is guilty, bro. He makes that face. It's like, yeah, but you'd have to find a version from the original game because, Claytham does not really sell the emotion the same way Haytham does. But,
Claytham.
Yeah, you can thank Shrooms for that. That's a good one. I don't know how I didn't see it before because it's so obvious. It makes the characters not make any sense. Absent that reading, you're right, the game doesn't make sense. Connor's behavior doesn't make any sense. But even that whole event, like, doesn't make sense because there's things they explicitly tell you about Charles Lee going to organize this. The scene right before it talking about exactly how bad Washington is as a leader, and then you just happen to find the letter that's like, by the way, he's gonna go burn down your village, bro. That's not a little bit too perfect. Connor noticed it. Most of us didn't. The game allows you to just blast by everything without really sitting down to think about it. that ultimately works to his downfall. Connor's character arc is a very common thing. Connor doesn't change. He's naive, whatever. It's like, okay, I just proved you that you're wrong because he noticed something that you didn't.
Yep.
Right? He is not naive. Because the Templars in this game frame themselves as radical pragmatists. Right? That's why Templars need no creed, because all it takes is a realization. One might also say an understanding. Oh, you're so idealistic. And even Templars like Hickey, I can have what I want. Because he's a very honest
Your hands
materialist.
will always be empty.
And so that's the whole point of the Templars in AC3. It's like it's pointing.
That's how they appeal to people.
A supposed pragmatic applicability of their ideology, because, as Hatham says, human nature is weak. We were made to serve, right? Which in Assassin's Creed we know is true. Like
literally, it is true.
Like that is, humans were created to be a slave race.
Yeah.
So we need to be led because everyone else is so incompetent. But there's a very glaring flaw in this. Why are the Templars supposedly exempt from this problem? What makes them more fit to lead despite having the same human nature as all of the other humans?
Well, a certain individual who is about to be freed very much disagrees with that notion that they are fit to lead anything.
Exactly. And that is, this is all why AC3's moving into the Juno plotline is so... this is ultimately AC3's philosophical contribution to Assassin's Creed. It's like, it needed an AC2 of developing this base, because AC1 introduces this idea of the Assassin-Templar thing, and it firmly talks about... AC3 is mainly about nothing is true, everything's permitted. That baseline.
Yeah.
Whereas AC2 builds out the anthropological foundations of what being in this kind of universe, the implications this has on, what are humans?
Yeah.
And then Corey May's next game, it's like, okay, with this information in mind, Templars, your thought actually doesn't make any sense. Because you say humans need to be led, created to serve. That is what AC3 shows in its story, is that Templars, for all their big talk, when they actually have to really engage practical implementation of their ideals, because human nature, because we're not perfect, because we have all these problems, even, literally the opposition of one man, it started with one guy who really, really wanted to stop them, completely undermined their entire operation.
Yeah.
Right? And ultimately, there's a lot of other stuff that Templars, a lot of the Templars fall to their different particular weaknesses, to their human weakness. Like Hickey, he wouldn't have gotten caught if he wasn't running that counterfeiting operation, and that's what ultimately leads to his death.
Yeah.
Hatham's personal weakness catches up to him because he couldn't bear to kill his son. The personal weakness of each of the Templars is the reason that the organization failed.
Yeah.
Because they're not exempt from the human condition.
They're not. And Assassins would celebrate that, but Templars see it as something to, disdain, basically. They're like, this is why humanity is imperfect, this is why it needs to be ruled. But then in AC4, the sticky notes you find, they call the first Civ / the Instruments of the First Will, they call the first Civ the true Templars. I don't know if you remember that phrasing.
I don't remember that. But yeah, that makes sense. And ultimately, it's you point, and that's why I say the Instruments of the First Will are the logical conclusion of Templar ideology.
Yeah, because they are no longer exempt from being ruled.
Yeah. Why are humans? What gives you the ability to be a good leader? What is good? That's ultimately the anthropological question: is what is a human? Why? Like the Assassins talk about freedom, or Templars talk about order. Okay, order for what? Order to what? And for Assassins, what they have to justify is, why is a human valuable? They have to talk about that question.
Yeah. And
that's ultimately, if we were to, a proper spiritual successor to AC3, would have, I think, with 50% present day, 50% past, and a lot of missions with Desmond, but it would have been mainly the Assassins fighting against the Instruments of the First Will, and the Templars would have had to kind of choose their loyalties in between, because really,
they would basically have a crisis of faith, because they're being confronted. It's literally what would happen to Templars is the same thing that happens to every assassin when they gain awareness of things.
Yeah.
And they have that moment where it kind of breaks their identity, and then they can no longer be who they used to be.
Yep, and that's why I like Rogue as a concept. And I was talking with Twig about this. Twig hates Rogue with a passion, even though he knows more about it than anybody else. Here's the thing though, if you want even if you wanted to make another 3 games just to like be able to fit your next game on the console generation while still keeping an annual release, I think Black Flag is actually an okay game. Expanding on this in a way, because number one, it introduces the Juno plot, so a gradual introduction to the concept of sages and instruments of the first will. It's also a question of, okay, so if we're taking the assassin perspective of nothing is true, everything's permitted, what if we like comically large interpret that nothing is true, everything's permitted? Take what I will and do as I please. I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Right? So literally take the assassin perspective to its max.
Like, see what happens if you run with this unrestrained.
And that's where Edward moves to, is like, oh, as Altair says, our creed does not command us to be free, it commands us to be wise.
Yes.
And we'll get into this shortly with some, because I've read Alamut now, and
good book.
Excellent book. 4 is like, okay, so here's the exposition and like really reframing and properly framing the assassin understanding of the maxim of the creed, and also offering a proper anthropology from an assassin perspective, right? Of like, okay, what is it to be a man? To just try to live your life in self-driven purpose, right? So that's your foundation of reason for being in anthropology. And 4 is a lot about that. So I think AC4 is a very, actually, in a lot of ways, if you were going to have another game that like properly built on 3, 4 is a good reinforcement, adding ammunition to the argument, if you will.
Yeah, Darby's also always been very good at that in Assassin's Creed, is just taking the very valuable and amazing work that a previous writer has done that tends to get ignored,
and just strengthening it and bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah, like he's amazing at dancing with, ironically enough, like those who came before, right? Like the writers who came before. Like,
this is true.
No one is that good at doing that, I feel like.
I would agree. You're going to follow up properly on Black Flag. How do you do that? So if we're going to lead to, we talked about that idea of Templars having a crisis of faith. What is Rogue about? It's the Templars examining Shay's memories to, I don't know, try to create some anti-assassin propaganda. What's the most natural way of leading towards that? It's have Shay go from, not from an assassin to a Templar. Have Shay go from an assassin to an instrument. This really backfired because now I'm like really questioning my own motivations for acting the way I am. And then you have the final game in the series that's really the showdown between Juno and her minions, and all of the people that really say, no, humans actually have worth and we deserve to be able to think for ourselves and do things.
I genuinely thought that's what Unity was going to be, because it's like the name Unity, it's like, oh my god, it's what the series has been building up to this whole time. Like, finally, like, Assassins and Templars uniting to defeat a common enemy and, like, assert our humanity, right?
The story of them kind of having a truce for a little bit.
It doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, in a way, is fitting, but at the same time, it's like, it's only fitting if the series doesn't have an end, which it doesn't anymore, and it never will, until, like, Ubisoft dies or whatever.
Think about what a legendary ending that would have been to just Assassin's Creed, though, where it's, like, that concept of Assassins and Templars uniting to, like, defeat Juno and the instruments, and then, like, both sides learning, like, from each other.
What else would... Like, if you consider even just AC1 in and of itself, right? Knowing the background expansion of the universe, even starting from AC1 with, like... Because they knew about the first Civ before they even started AC1, they briefly hint at it. They very much were sequel-based.
They're gifts, Mr. Miles. Gifts.
From those who came before. But, you start from AC1. The questions that Assassin's Creed philosophically is dealing with. There is no other way for the series to end other than in that kind of conflict.
Yeah.
There is no other way for the philosophy of the series to progress beyond that. That is the natural conclusion of... I mean, if you wanted to be pretty black-pilled, you could, say, actually, the instruments are right, guys. And that would be kind of like a, whoa, I
don't think Assassin's Creed would end that way, because it's fundamentally a hopeful series.
This is true, right? But, theoretically, that is, one possible way you could take it. Or you could, make a strong case for the inherent value of a human person. And from there say, oh, yeah, actually, no, the assassins are right, that we need to like defend ourselves because yeah, what Etsu said, it's your ability to choose what you think is true that makes us human. Have a lot of the Templars realize that, and have some of them defect too. Like seriously, like that would be if all the Templars just became assassins. That would be kind of
It wouldn't make sense. Yeah, it
yeah,
wouldn't
exactly.
feel it
Because
wouldn't feel authentic. And besides,
yeah,
like Assassin's Creed has long been a series where like assassins become Templars, Templars become something else.
bring back to like why Assassin's Creed, as Assassin's Creed really died with AC3 is there was never another game, not even one, even ones written by Darby, that did anything with this.
No.
Never.
Yeah.
Like
Even
this
later
this
concepts
single.
of sages and stuff, like they're
Yep.
different types of sages. Like
Yep.
their purpose like in the narrative is totally different.
Yep.
Which
The
granted he was
single.
kind of pushed into doing that, like cuz again,
Yep.
he's very good at like cleaning up other people's messes as a writer.
Yep.
And
Yep. His
like he
Origins and Odyssey were
yeah, and
were
he
him.
always kind of has to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't say he was cleaning up any messes with Revelations, but
It was
I
meant to
think
be an exploration of like what is the cost of being an assassin like to you personally, and
yep.
what is the choice to be an assassin genuinely entail. And it's something that a lot of people like didn't really think about at the time, and so the Valhalla audio logs came in, and it's like no, like you should genuinely think about this, especially
Yep.
because like they're in Desmond's voice, right? Like we
Yeah,
should be free
exactly
to
right.
ignore it, right? Which is like that's like the most feeding an AC fans vegetables to them way to
Yep.
like get a fan to think about it. Is like, hey, look, it's Desmond Miles saying this stuff. Are you really gonna just like ignore him? Like,
Yeah, like I'm planning to at some point make like philosophical analyses of each game in the series to really hammer home this point of no, like Assassin's Creed, if we want Assassin's Creed to be Assassin's Creed again, it really, I mean, really needs to go back to AC1 if we're being really, really honest. But like, it at the very least, like we draw the line at AC3. Taking anything beyond AC3 as the model, except for like maybe some gameplay ideas like black box assassinations or like a more proper parkour down button. I wouldn't be sad if they brought that over or things like
if
that,
if
right?
we are considering the Sage and Instrument and Juno stuff of Black Flag to be like an extension of AC3's
Sure.
stuff,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't think AC4 does that amazingly well, but it's not incompetent either, you know.
yeah,
It's very limited by there not being this is why I think killing Desmond was a really bad idea because having that explore being able to do that as Desmond would have allowed for a lot more interesting stuff like
yeah.
real present day missions, you can have the real conversations other than, just like talking about game dev stuff with Melanie LeMay and Olivier or whatever,
Yeah.
like so and there's and having the Sage stuff like if you had a real playable present day character it would have been a lot better. Darby did what he could with what he was given. So if we don't draw the line at Assassin's Creed is this, if we don't draw that line after AC3, like
It's
we're
just
not
kind of
there's
mush, like
yep, exactly. There is no like it's not a unified identity, and it's going to give people the wrong ideas about what Assassin's Creed is and
yeah.
why we like it.
And we've seen that
And
because like
yeah.
people already have those wrong ideas.
Yep. When they first released like the very first clips of Shadow's parkour clips, like there was the first one with like the where she was climbing down the building and then and
Oh,
then
like
and I
the
made
super old ones from like
yeah,
way
months
back.
ago, like 4 months ago, yep.
Okay, yeah.
I used to watch Smosh as a kid, and then eventually Anthony left, and I stopped watching the videos. And then they hired a whole bunch of new people to come on. And then they started hiring people, got to a point where one of the new people they hired didn't know who Anthony was. They would make all these jokes about where's Anthony. He just didn't get it. This person did not understand, well, who's Anthony? I don't get the joke. It's some dude that left the show, I guess. I don't know. But no one, like, never met him, never seen a Smosh video with Anthony in it. And then he comes back and is like, oh, Anthony's back. Okay, great. Like, it's the same thing with Assassin's Creed. It's like Assassin's Creed is 18 years old. They're going to be 18 years old this fall. What's the likelihood that every one of the developers at Ubisoft Quebec working on Shadows has played AC1?
I would say it's quite small. I think I'm pretty confident that like the directors, art director, like
Oh, yeah, I'm
systems
sure.
director, like whatever roles they have, I'm sure all of them have played AC1.
Yeah. I mean, some of them worked on like Brotherhood and stuff, so
Yeah.
they've been there a long. Some of them have been there a long time, but a
But
lot of the
even
people,
in the
like,
course of like research, like recently to like
yeah,
in the course of making the game. Like I have no
Yeah.
doubt. But when it comes to like everyone else, you can't guarantee that.
Yeah, it's like you could have played. That's the thing about this. Like, you could have played every single Assassin's Creed game that's come out for the last decade and never touched on what we're talking about as what is like the core of Assassin's Creed's identity.
Yeah.
That's how far removed we are from that, even just temporally speaking.
Yeah.
So you can't even really blame them.
No,
for
you
not
can't.
knowing.
You definitely can't.
You can't blame them.
It's just like the nature of this kind of thing. Like a lot of time has passed, and it would almost be unreasonable to expect, everyone to have played like the first game in the series, especially because, if they hadn't played it at the time, when it was contemporary, like you just don't really have that emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
And so like, is it really fair to expect everyone to do that? Like
Not really.
obviously, like emotionally, we would want that.
Yeah, and you can make a good argument for why, if you're going to develop an Assassin's Creed game, you should play all of the games in the series. You can make an argument for that.
Definitely.
But, like, I can't actually have an expectation and be upset that they don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. So
because again, like it does take a lot of time. Like and at the end of the day, it's like the game you're making is probably going to be so different from that like, is it even worth it?
Exactly.
To play it, because like it's not like you're gonna be making anything like it.
Changed away from that.
Yeah.
Ubisoft has been very clear that like especially around Odyssey's marketing, it's like, yeah, this is not the Assassin's Creed you knew.
Yeah. Like Assassin's Creed is very much about like big nature spaces and like forests and mountains and that kind of stuff. Like that's what Assassin's Creed is now. And then when the Valhalla marketing cycle was really hitting, like they were very transparent about that as well, where it's like, look, this is what we're proud of with our world design. Like we're able to make these like big expanses, and like that's what we really like. And it's like, all right, like that's fair.
Take it back to AC3 though. What's really interesting about that, especially the world, AC3 in its like small little frontier accomplishes what Valhalla intends to do with its entire world, or even Odyssey. I think Valhalla in some ways actually does accomplish this. Origins too, like in terms of immersion into the world. AC3 accomplishes that so much better in its tiny little frontier.
Yeah, because there's actually mechanical consequence to existing in it. We were talking about trudging through deep snow, right? Like,
yep.
Or
being able to like do things that aren't just running on horseback.
Yeah, there's actually like things to engage with.
Missions, trees to viewpoints, trees to just run around in. You have actually mechanically engaging hunting. Little chests to go and find in caves. The caves aren't like marked on a map with the pointer. You have to go and find them. And now you can buy the chest maps. If you don't buy the map for the chest, you'll just be like running around. You'll hear like the little like jingling sound that tells you there's something around. It's like, oh, there's a chest around here. But you look around, it's like, oh, it's in a cave down here. All of these role-playing things and like being immersed into the world. It's like you go back to something like AC3, it's like the role-playing aspect in AC3 is so much better than any of the role-playing Assassin's Creed games.
I think that's how a lot of people feel about the classic games in general, and we cite things like being able to sit on a bench, being able to hold your hidden blade out, being able to just pray. These things they allow you to kind of like RP as the character and like behave as them. They don't necessarily always have like a gameplay effect. Clearly, like they're attached to mechanics that do. Yeah. Whereas nowadays it's kind of like you cannot do any action that isn't like sanctioned by the system almost.
Yep.
Which is crazy considering the themes of the series.
Yep. Yeah, that's ludonarratively speaking, that's crazy actually. Especially those puzzles. Yeah, the game says nothing is true, everything's permitted, but I can't eject onto a ladder because I need to push the bookshelf there instead. This playthrough I've done of AC3 is just, it's really put into perspective a lot of the things that felt like I had to kind of be like, well, it kind of understands this way, whatever about AC3. This has shown me like, no, okay, if you actually just take stock of what AC3 is and what it's trying to do, if you do the little bit of extra work on your part of like restricting yourself in those ways, it's such a special game. And a lot of the critiques that people have of it just literally vanish before your eyes. And I think that in a lot of ways, like especially the narrative stuff, I will defend AC3's narrative in terms of content and writing of characters. And and I wanted to finish up Connor's character arc too. Okay, I do actually need to make that point. People saying Connor's naive, he doesn't grow, whatever. No, Connor's grows with his understanding of the assassins and the removal of the speech too. Connor's speech being removed, I don't think it was a bad decision. I don't think it was the right decision either, in the sense of like, I don't think having it in would be better than not having it in. in reality, the essence of Connor's character development is contained in his last piece of dialogue he has with Charles Lee, where Charles Lee, he's sitting on the bottom of the ship, huge spoilers for AC3A, but, it's after the chase, Connor gets impaled, he says to Charles Lee, he said, Charles Lee, like, what, you still fight, everyone around you is, like, leaving you behind, thinking you're a madman, like, why do you still fight? And Connor says, because no one else will.
That's assassin as fuck.
That is, if you listen to his speech, that is the entire speech.
Yeah.
That's his point. Because Connor is an idealist. He is, like, in the proper sense of the word, like Plato idealism. Like, I don't know, like, he really believes in the forms or whatever, but, like, Connor believes that there are things that are objectively wrong, and there's some things that are objectively right, and things are based on these principles. And the Templars are saying, no, be pragmatic, your stupid principles, Pitcairn says to him, we should all live in castles in the sky, right? When Connor says everyone should be free. When Connor says to Haytham, freedom is peace. And Haytham says, oh no, it's an invitation to chaos. Well, no. If we understand freedom as freedom from illegitimate coercion on your actions, that is to say, like, if we want to take a strong anarchist take, statutory influence, right? Freedom is the only thing that can be peace.
Yeah, because all others are counterfeit.
Exactly, right? So that's the point. Whereas Templars, if you listen the way that, how does Vidic define peace in AC1? The end of all conflicts, large and small. For Templars, it is, or Al-Muallim, right? In AC1, I'm simply giving them another illusion. One that requires less blood.
Yeah.
For them, peace is like, someone is not getting stabbed, therefore peace.
Right? Yeah. Never mind, like, the subtle violence done to, like, the people for whom they no longer even have the option to stab anyone, when otherwise that would have been their only recourse.
Yeah, or implicit violence.
Or implicit violence,
yeah. Because, I mean, a little bit of anarchist political theory, but, yeah, like, if we talk about the state, like, politics, really, it boils down to, like, if we're talking about the statutory politics,
like, who has a monopoly on violence, basically.
Yes, who gets to be violent against who, and we consider it moral, right?
Exactly.
If you take that perspective, which lots of people, like, there are a lot of really intelligent philosophers and political, like, theorists and everything, like, that is a legit, you actually have to answer that argument. You can't just laugh it off, like, haha, invitation to chaos. It's like, no, like, and I don't think Haytham actually does laugh it off. I think he just doesn't really care to get into a strong debate with Connor on that roof. And he goes on to make some fairly cogent points about, like, the nature of power and, like, elitism theory and things like that. No, like, Connor, when he says freedom is peace, is not just being a dum-dum. There's actual political philosophy behind that. It makes sense. It's just you have to get into the nature of power and anthropology and things like that, which is what the whole series is about.
Yeah.
Right? So Connor's not a dum-dum. He's not a naive idiot who just, he is that's what I mean. He's an idealist, but he's an idealist in the sense that I have principles, and those principles are the things by which my actions are governed.
Yes.
Whereas the Templars are simply going to say, well, they kind of end up having to assume a principle, but they claim this ever pragmatic, it's all because, it'd be great if you could have these ideals, but in reality, we have to be this pragmatic thing because it's a thing. Now, AC3 shows us that can't be the case because Templars, in a way, are right about human nature, right? Because of Templar philosophy, Templars are no more idealist than our assassin. And
it's just that Templars are kind of running unexamined scripts, essentially. Yeah. Like, they're vetoing their self-reflection, essentially.
Yeah, they're kind of assuming what needs to be proved in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So, but that's the point, is that when Connor says, what Connor says in the speech, talking about my compromise is different than most. Because he says to Haytham, like, yeah, I'm not going to stop fighting for what I fight for. His point is, he goes from an idealism of, everything can be great and perfect. I can make the world into exactly what I need to. He holds on to this very much until his very last fight with Haytham, when he goes into Fort George. And there's that big old, give me Lee line that everyone makes fun of. But that line is actually the one, this playthrough, I saw them like, wow, that is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Because Connor is desperately wanting to be able to save his father from, like, being a Templar and convert him to fighting for the assassins and fighting for, believing in humanity as having inherent worth, or a human. Because I think Templars believe humanity has worth, but I don't think they believe
individual humans don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Irrationally been acting about that in contradiction with his understanding that he's fighting a notion. He's been behaving with this on this personal side of things because he's just hoping he can have his dad back.
Yeah, because, I mean, who else does he have? Like, his mom is dead.
Yeah, because he even says that right before
His
in the
best
family
friend
quarterly.
dies by his own
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah, because his dad made him have to kill him because Charles Lee converted him to think Connor was trying to, sell them out to the Patriots or
Yeah, and
whatever.
that's why he feels so much rage for Lee in this moment, because it's like, this is the man who took like so much I love away from me.
Yep. But in addition to that, right, on top of that, Lee was supposed to be in the fort, and right in the memory corridor sequence 11, he says, if I could just get rid of Lee and my dad's the last Templar left, maybe we can turn him, right?
Yeah.
But he's faced with his dad there, his father, Hatham Kenway, and he's realizes he can't escape. He's in no shape to run. He's in no shape, like, he just realizes, I'm going to have to kill my dad,
Yeah.
and he is broken. So in desperation, he cries, "Give me Lee!" because he's like, "Please, Dad, don't make me kill you." That is what's going on with "Give me Lee."
Yeah.
So the fact that people make fun of that line, it's like,
It's the same people who make fun of Tidus's laugh from Final Fantasy, because
okay,
they're like, "Oh, that laugh, like ha 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 ha, it's so cringe." And it's like, it's because you're watching the scene out of context. In context, that scene is him faking laughter because everything is so shitty. And so like,
yeah.
in context, that's actually extremely sad.
Yeah, so that wrapping up my point, it's like, yeah, everything that I've like seen, all of the big criticisms I've seen against AC3's narrative in terms of like content, I think almost everything, maybe there's some stuff I've overlooked, but almost all of the very, very common criticisms are literally just like people not paying enough attention. I don't know, like especially the Hatham thing, like I don't see how I missed that the first 4 times I played this game. Like
I mean, dude,
it's
if you
actually kind
missed
of
it and
humbling.
you love the game, like, imagine what it's like for just like the average player, right? Like,
Who blasts through the main story and doesn't. Yeah. That's what I say. Like I think AC3 really is a super special game that nothing else in the series has ever been like it. And also, yeah, like ties in super duper well with all of like the entire philosophical momentum that the series has had since its inception. It reached an incomplete culmination in AC3 because nothing that followed on it has meaningfully constructed upon that other than like Black Flag with some like here and there like underpinning like the assassin anthropology in a lot of ways.
yeah.
But aside from that, like there has been nothing since then. Like the series has done absolutely nothing to carry the main, like that philosophy, that question is the main point of the narrative in Assassin's Creed from the beginning. Like that is what the series is
Yeah,
about.
so
Is
like, when
what
when
are
people say
humans?
like, "Oh, I miss like the philosophy of Assassin's Creed," like, even if they don't realize that's what they're referring to, that is what they're referring to.
Yes, exactly. Because people talk about, oh, what does it mean for Assassin Templars to be done well? It doesn't mean, Assassins and Templars are characters that are Assassins and Templars are present in your game, right? Now, it's just because the way the series has gone that that's now considered a bonus,
Yeah.
right? That, like, at least, Odyssey is, it's like you get back to Valhalla. It's like,
The
well, at least
bar
there's
is in
Assassins and
hell.
Templars. There is an Assassin Templar philosophy. It isn't just like, oh, you're having morally gray Templars or morally gray Assassin. I think AC2 having evil Templars, like quote unquote pure evil Templars, Rodrigo seeking power because he wants power. It's like Kino and I were talking about this. It's like, actually, no, like that doesn't make him any less a Templar than Hatham or
Yeah.
than Roberto Sab because Templar philosophy is somebody. It's about there needing to be somebody in charge
Yes.
because humans are ruled. So
The
it doesn't
exact
matter if the person in charge is, quote unquote selfless or not.
Yeah, I mean,
It
like,
doesn't matter.
literally, that's the whole point of Thomas Hickey in AC3. You
Yeah.
know, he's like,
Or
"I will
Marshall Dean
always have a
Marshall.
beer in one hand and a titty in the other, but like, your hands
Yeah.
will always be empty," right?
Yeah.
Like,
Or Marshall Dean
sometimes,
in AC1.
exactly, Majd Din, like, "I did it because it was fun. I was like a
Exactly.
god," right? Like, some
Yeah.
Templars are drawn to that. Like, that
Exactly.
is not a bug of their faction, it is a feature.
Exactly. And that's why, like, people say, well, AC2 has these comically, comic book villain Templars. I'm like, no. It actually leans into the moral grayness of being a Templar as a whole to have those pure evil, or I think, again, better term is self-interested
Self-interested,
Templars.
yeah.
Is it actually says something interesting about being a Templar that someone like that can be in charge of the Templars,
Exactly, yeah. Like,
right?
what does that say
So,
about their faction, that such a Templar is even possible and is
yeah.
tolerated?
Yeah,
right?
and it doesn't contradict Templarism in any way.
And conversely, like, whenever you look at assassins, like, it is very difficult and rare for an assassin to display that kind of selfishness, and they are not tolerated by their faction. Look at what happens to Arno.
Yep, exactly. Right? So that's or Altair.
Or Altair, holy, we don't even, like, the first game.
Yeah, like Al Muwallim, the only reason Al Muwallim doesn't kill Altair is because of how good he is.
Yeah,
right?
he needs his power, yeah.
Exactly, because Al Muwallim, knowing, who actually is actually a self-interested.
Who you are and what you do are twined too tight together. To rob you of
Yeah.
one would have deprived me of the other.
Yeah, or to just kill him off. It's like, okay, so then who else am I going to send to go kill these people? You know?
No one else is that good.
Yeah, exactly. So
especially now that like Malik's arm is fucked up. Like Malik maybe before his, before that happened, like he could have actually stepped to Altair in skill level. I feel like that's why they sent them both, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And and Malik's brother too. Yep.
Yeah, he was being like trained still. It's kind of like when you send a recruit with like 2 level 10s.
Yeah. You could just, bro, this mission's gonna get you so much XP. Just tag along, bro. Trust me.
And then he dies.
Yeah, so Jover. But yeah, it's like, yeah, the only problem is that, again, I think the issue with taking that approach is and it wasn't in the conception. The problem is AC2 had to be split into 2 games.
Yeah.
Because Ubisoft said so. So you got the comic book, quote unquote, comic book Templars 2 games in a row.
Yeah.
And everyone associates Assassin's Creed exclusively with Ezio in popular conception, right? Ezio is Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, and then by the time of Revelations, the fatigue had like more than set in. I know a lot of my, like, so many of my friends and like best friends and just close friends throughout like school and whatnot, like they were there in AC1 and 2 and Brotherhood on day 1. Like this game was hype. This series, when it was about capital A assassins, was hype as fuck for quote unquote normies. And then by the time of Revelations, the fatigue was really starting to set in, and people just didn't even buy it. I was like the only person I knew who was playing Revelations day 1.
Yeah. They probably bought AC3 though, yeah?
Some of them did. But others, they were just like, they were out.
Alright, I'm chill. Farewell. No, it's fair enough. I mean, that's just a consequence of, how Ubisoft's business practices. Quote unquote non-morally gray Templars of AC2. It's like, no, actually, these have thematic purpose. And again, like I said, Corey May's games are utterly philosophically coherent. And Darby's interjection in there with AC and Brotherhood, again, tie Brotherhood into AC2 narratively. Darby provides some really interesting necessary padding on the personal side of being an assassin.
Yeah.
And then AC3 comes in, and that's Corey May's final Assassin's Creed game. Give AC3 a shot. It's more people should be making AC3 stuff. And tying into the choreo point, which kind of what I wanted to talk about too, feels like things are finally turning around for AC3, and like people are kind of realizing, wait a second, yeah, this game is actually kind of sick. If more people just like really had an experience where they were able to enjoy AC3 and really appreciate what it did for the series, that would give the fan base a significantly clearer direction for what to push for in following games. And also it's just the benefit of like actually enjoying a game that you didn't like before, which is like part of the main reason why I wanted to make choreo in the first place, because a lot of people, and you too, that a lot of people didn't really appreciate the AC games for what they allowed you to do in terms of mechanical expression and visual design and of levels and that sort of stuff. These games are cool, bro. This is Assassin's Creed, and it's awesome.
My AC3 present day videos are still some of the stuff I'm most proud of on my channel.
Yeah, they're good videos.
Especially that like Abstergo raid one. Holy.
Yeah, that was good. I've never understood the criticisms of like, well, why are we doing missions the present day? It's like, are you really telling me the people coming into this game knew that Desmond was going to die, right? They knew that Desmond was going to have to die. Ubisoft made that clear. Desmond's dying.
Imagine if we never got to be badass Desmond before he died.
The whole point.
They just gave us like a parting gift, basically. They're like, look, like this character is going away, but like you get to have this thing that we've been foreshadowing for like 5 games. You at least get to have a taste of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, thank you. Like, I appreciate that.
Yeah. And in addition, that's what the games were building up to, right? So imagine you had a fully modern day game, which of course Patrice wanted, right? That was part of his original conception, was to have a present day game.
Yeah.
How weird would it be if there was no overlap of like, okay, there's a little bit of present day here, and then you go full present day. It's like you're telling me that the game where the present day has a little bit of overlap and there's like missions and stuff like that. That's the weird thing. Like, oh, that's not what present day is about, but it's okay to have a full present day game, but you can have the intermediate stage, right? Like that concept is like, even if AC like made one more game after 3 and it was fully present day, it would have been weird to have no present day missions like that, like AC3 had, before you go full present day. It would just be weird. So you would need the intermediary stage. Yeah. So I've just never understood the criticisms. I think it's just tied.
I think people are just allergic to anything like vaguely futuristic and cyberpunky, and as soon as you take them out of the animus, even if it's like the coolest fucking shit in the world, their eyes just glaze over and they die.
Sure. Yeah, but I've even seen people that like really like Assassin's Creed, like they'll just defend Brotherhood's present day, which I think is really great, right?
It is pretty good.
No knocking Brotherhood's present day, but then they'll say, but AC3 present day is supposed to be like Brotherhood. You're not supposed to just be doing the things in the animus that you do in present day. I'm like, well, why not?
No, like, why not? You do things appropriate to the game that you're in. And if that calls for, like, raiding an Abstergo facility, then that's what it calls for. Like, what makes us exempt from doing the stuff the other assassins on, like, the Altair 2 are doing? We know that they do these kind of things. Why arbitrarily bar the player character from doing that too? Some Assassin's Creed fans have this fixation where it's like, the gameplay always has to take a backseat to, like, the story. When they look at something like AC3 present day, where it's like, okay, yeah, obviously, like, narratively, it's less maybe cohesive than Brotherhood. My counterpoint to that is, have you considered playing as Desmond, running around killing shit in present day is cool as fuck. It's okay for a game to just do cool video gamey shit. It's a game.
That is a level at which it's a game does apply to Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I keep saying this, like, Assassin's Creed used to be cool, and Assassin's Creed used to, like, not be afraid to be cool.
Most of the claims I've seen about AC3's present day don't make that much sense. Like, the idea that there's no interesting discussion of things, like, you know, the conversations you have with people in Brotherhood or things like that. AC3 has plenty of that. Or you go read the emails, the binary that Juno is learning to communicate through the emails.
Yeah, and then she starts, like, typing in English.
I think everything that people like about AC Brotherhood's present day is in a lot of ways present in AC3's present day.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not as funny. Brotherhood is...
AC3 is a very serious and, like, dour game, because, like, the world is about to end, dude.
Except for the homestead. There's some very much needed levity in any, like, homestead stuff. Most of your life, even if you're having a serious thing, like, a lot of the time there's going to be that, like, this is my escape. This is my home base, right? Yeah, like, that's what it is for Connor. So you don't do the homestead, you have deprived Connor of his home base. No wonder things feel so bad.